This evening's lesson is one that I have struggled with, to be downright honest with you. It's an interesting lesson, an interesting topic, one that I guess I struggle with to a certain point, and I'll try to explain that as we go down through the lesson this evening. But just suffice to say that I consider myself to be a conservative, and a conservative Christian at that. And so I think you'll see as we go down through this lesson why this has been a struggle for me, but it's been something that I've been working on in my mind and on paper for some time now. And that is the word. We're going to actually study a word that comes from Colossians chapter 2. So if you want to go ahead and open your Bibles there, I will be using the English Standard Version, but we'll also be using several other versions to compare, because this particular passage reads quite differently in a particular word. That word we're going to look at is asceticism. And if you're like me, asceticism first caught my attention when I studied this passage, because in my terminology, it's $1 million word, and I'm a 2-bit preacher. So, you know, when you're looking at $1 million word and a 25-cent preacher, I can't say asceticism very well, or couldn't, without some practice and study. But I asked myself, I'm reading this passage. So if you're opening your Bibles to Colossians chapter 2, I'll be reading again from my English Standard Version, beginning in verse 16, and I want to read through the end of the chapter instead of just to verse 19. I'm going to go ahead and go through the end of that chapter. Paul says, "Therefore, let no one pass judgment on you in questions of food or drink, or with regard to a festival, or a new moon, or a Sabbath. These are shadows of things to come, but the substance belongs to Christ. Let no one disqualify you, insisting on asceticism and worship of angels, going on in detail about visions, puffed up without reason by his sensuous mind, and not holding fast to the head, from whom the whole body, nourished and knit together through its joints and ligaments, grows with a growth that is from God. If with Christ you died to the elementary spirits of the world." Why? Why, as if you were still alive in the world, do you submit to regulations? Do not handle. Do not taste. Do not touch. Referring to things that all perish as they are used, according to human precepts and teachings. These have indeed an appearance of wisdom in promoting self-made religion and asceticism, and severity to the body, but they are of no value in stopping the indulgence of the flesh. So what does that word mean? Asceticism. I guess the first thing I wanted to do, in my limited Greek, is not sufficient to comprehend or understand in the amount of time that I've worked on this lesson. It's not sufficient to understand the full meaning of that Greek word that is used and translated as asceticism. There seems to be a lot of connotations there, and so various translators have translated that word differently, and we'll look at those in a moment. But the word asceticism is only used twice in the English Standard Version. Both are in the passage in which we just read here in Colossians chapter 2. And we were studying this a while back in our Sunday morning Bible class, and we ran across this word. And it really generated a lot of questions, a lot more questions than answers, because quite frankly, when I read over it, I said, well, I can't say that word, and I kind of skipped over it and moved on. Well, that's not sufficient for my Bible class because we have a lot of questions in my Bible class. Any class that has as many teenagers and grade schoolers and just old people with questions as mine does, and I'm thankful for that. What does asceticism mean? And I'm like, I don't know. Let's Google it. Anyway, suffice to say, we did compare with several translations, and I want to do that tonight because, as I said, I just don't have the depth of knowledge at this point to go deeper than what other translators who know more about the Greek language than I do have gone. The American Standard Version says, let no man rob you, sorry, there's a typo, rob you of your prize by voluntary humility and worship of angels. So they've translated it voluntary humility. I believe your King James Version has the same if you're studying out of that. We'll get to that, and right here it is. It does. It says, let no man beguile you of your reward in a voluntary humility. So again, those two translations, and I respect both translations. They're very accurate. Also, if we look at, and I put NIV because we have some brethren at 2nd Street that use the NIV. I don't like this personally as a translation because there are a lot of faults with this translation. I feel more so than some of the others. Not that I'm being critical. I do believe that an NIV Bible will give you the information that you need to become a Christian, to be a child of God, and to make heaven your home. So I don't mean to be too critical. But they translate this as, do not let anyone who delights in false humility and the worship of angels disqualify you. So you see the sentence structure is even different in this translation. But they translate it as a false humility. Okay? So that's the basic difference there, even though the wording, the sentence structure is different. And I think one of the reasons I don't, just a side note, one of the reasons I don't like NIV is they do change the sentence structure. And so for me, it's sometimes harder to follow if I'm studying Greek. Now, and the final one I have here today is the New Living, and I left the word translation off because New Living Bible is not a translation. It is a paraphrase. However, I cannot believe that I'm saying this, and I may change my mind as I go deeper into it. But I think the New Living Translation, or the New Living Bible, has actually nailed this one very close in common language without $1 million word. And it reads, do not let anyone condemn you by insisting on pious self-denial or the worship of angels, saying they have had visions about these things. Their sinful minds have made them proud. So in this instance, they have rendered the word asceticism as pious self-denial. Okay, fair enough. We have false humility. We have self-denial. We have other things, and you can look at other translations, but almost all of them render it as some form of required humility in some translations.